Picture this. You're 13 years old. You have absolutely no money, zero connections, and no famous family members to give you a leg up. Literally all you have is a laptop, an internet connection, and a dream that everyone around you thinks is just completely unrealistic. Yet, today, that exact same kid is known to millions as MrBeast. He's pulling in hundreds of millions of views and running businesses worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So, how in the world does a regular teenager actually pull that off?
Well, it's super easy to look at him now and assume the secret sauce is just throwing money around. Ask most people and they'll point to the insane giveaways, the massive islands, and the luxury cars. They think the money is the secret. But the reality? It's honestly way less glamorous. The actual foundation of his success comes down to two things: pure, unadulterated obsession and some incredibly relentless systems.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're totally deconstructing the unbelievable journey of Jimmy Donaldson to pull out a real, practical playbook for all you aspiring creators out there. We're going to dig right into the DNA of his success and figure out the exact habits you can start applying to your own journey today. Here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll separate the myth from the reality. Then, dive into our first key habit, data-driven experimentation. After that, we'll look at the big breakthrough decision he made, followed by habit 2, prioritizing long-term growth. Finally, we'll map out how he built his entire creator ecosystem and wrap it up with the ultimate takeaway. Think of this as your structured playbook, so let's jump in.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the myth versus the reality. Let's just fundamentally flip how we think about those early days he spent locked in a small bedroom.
There's this quote I absolutely love. It goes, "Most teenagers use YouTube for entertainment. Jimmy Donaldson used it as a puzzle." And that really hits the nail on the head. While everyone else his age was just kicking back, casually watching videos and consuming content, he was leaning in. He was literally obsessed with figuring out why certain videos blew up while others completely tanked. To him, it wasn't just entertainment, it was a code that needed cracking.
Which brings us to Section 2 and our first major actionable habit, data-driven experimentation. This is all about treating every single upload as a test.
Because here is the incredibly painful reality of those early years. Just imagine spending hours and hours planning, shooting, editing. You finally hit publish, and you get exactly 23 views. Ouch, right?
So you dust yourself off and try again. You work just as hard. You upload, and the needle barely moves up to 54 views. Let's be real. For 99% of people, this is the exact moment they just shut the laptop and walk away completely. The silence of the internet can be deafening when nobody is watching.
You push through, try a third time, and you hit 89 views. But here is the absolute game changer. For him, these tiny numbers weren't a signal to quit. Instead of getting discouraged, he looked at every single view, and more importantly, every single flop as a crucial piece of data for the next one. He essentially turned his channel into a massive laboratory where every upload was a calculated experiment.
So what exactly was he testing in this lab? Well, he spent years dissecting a very specific set of elements. We're talking thumbnails, titles, audience retention, click-through rates, and deep viewer psychology. He was gathering data like a scientist. If you're a creator yourself, this really needs to be your daily checklist. Turn those failures into data points and use that data to engineer your next successful video.
Okay, moving right along to Section 3, the breakthrough decision. Let's see how all this relentless experimenting finally reached a massive tipping point. You really have to appreciate the sheer timeline here. Year 1, the first uploads go live. Fast forward to year 3, and he's still grinding through failures, essentially shouting into an empty void. Talk about patience. But eventually, around year 5, boom, the breakthrough. He engineered a challenge so unusually compelling that people simply couldn't ignore it. The views exploded, subscribers poured in, and years of completely invisible, grueling work finally produced these explosive results.
Now let's jump into Section 4 and habit number 2, prioritizing long-term growth. Because what happens next is actually the most crucial part of his entire story. So suddenly, the money and the views are flooding in. What do most creators do? They celebrate. They go out, buy a flashy car, maybe a nice house, but not him. He made the deliberate choice to take practically every single dollar and dump it right back into making better videos. He funded bigger challenges, hired production teams, bought better gear. He actively rejected the temptation to get rich quickly so he could build a much larger machine. This shift in mindset is absolutely vital. While other creators were obsessing over how to squeeze more money out of their views, he was obsessing over how to capture more attention.
He figured out super early on that holding global attention is a way more valuable long-term asset than a quick payout. It's really simple. If you hold the world's attention, the money is going to follow organically.
Up next, in Section 5, we look at building the creator ecosystem. This perfectly illustrates how capturing pure attention translates into a massive, tangible business.
Because he played the long game for attention instead of cash, his opportunities just exploded. That massive attention span translated into huge brand partnerships, evolved into really deep corporate collaborations, and eventually gave him the leverage to launch entirely new physical businesses. That loyal audience he spent years building, that became the ultimate foundation. It completely transformed him from a guy making YouTube videos in his bedroom into a fully diversified media juggernaut.
All right, bringing us to our final section, the ultimate creator takeaway. Let's tie all of this together and look at what most people completely miss about building an empire like this. If we really have to boil down the secret to his success, it's not the millions of dollars. It's not the insane viral giveaways. All of that came way later. The actual real secret is doing something thousands of times when there's absolutely zero guarantee it'll work, and making tiny improvements when absolutely no one is watching. The big stunts captured our attention, sure, but the unglamorous, relentless systems are what actually built the empire.
I really want this phrase to sink in for a second. Success is usually invisible before it becomes obvious. We all saw the millions, the huge sets, the businesses later on, but before any of that, there was just quiet, disciplined grinding in a tiny bedroom late at night. That's the part we don't usually see, but for sure, it's the exact bedrock every single true success story is built upon.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to really chew on. Looking back at this crazy journey, what do you think was the biggest driver of his success? Was it that ruthless, data-driven experimentation we talked about? Or maybe his ironclad discipline to prioritize long-term growth by reinvesting everything back into the channel? And more importantly, how are you going to take these exact habits and apply them to your own work starting today? Keep that in mind next time you sit down to create. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep building.